when I booked that first train ride, it got the first sense of like what it meant that the journey could be part of the destination. And I think that train ride from Chicago to Emeryville was like, oh, part of this adventure was the fact I was able to sit down and just be. Part of the adventure was that I slept a lot on that train ride, actually, though. Like, I was knocked on that train. I was waking up for meals and stuff like that. Part of that train ride, I was talking to people. So, like, you were meeting people. I hadn't really gone anywhere. I hadn't left the train, but I was still having a very interesting solo travel experience that didn't require me to plan all this stuff once I got off of it. So it made me appreciate those smaller moments that I think I had taken for granted beforehand or just not really thought about beforehand.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome to Unlock Black Journeys, the podcast, where we archive the Black experience across all 50 states. I'm your host, Dr. Franny. On this podcast, we explore Black travel, celebrate Black businesses, unpack the Black experience, and highlight our Black communities. Season 1 is Black in Motion, how we experience place. Welcome to today's episode. In this episode, we're unlocking Black Milwaukee through train travel. Today's guest is Sojourner White, the train travel queen and award-winning travel vlogger and writer behind Sojournies. What started as a late-night Google search led to a 52-hour Amtrak ride and a passion that's taken her across 20-plus train routes in the United States and around the world, from Alaska to Uzbekistan. Through her vibrant videos and slow travel storytelling, she's built a community of 350,000, exploring destinations, one meal, one museum, and one meaningful connection at a time. If you're curious about traveling slower by train or exploring the Black experience in Milwaukee, this episode is for you. Let's get into it. I am so excited to have you on here, Sojourner. I've been following you for years, starting with Instagram and your blog, and then now YouTube and LinkedIn. I think I love that we get different angles of your life on each platform. But what I love most is the vibrancy and boldness you show up, especially with the colored hair and the colored nails. I think we are kindred spirits.
I love that. Thank you for having me.
Today, we'll get into train travel more deeply because that, I think, is such an underrated way to move. First, I love to start off just grounding the episode, talking about place and our Black identity in said place, because I think that has an impact in terms of how we move through the world. So if you can share with us, where did you grow up? Where are you based right now?
Yes, well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to chat about all things Black travel and trains. So I grew up in this room. I'm actually in my childhood room. I grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I was like out of the city. I was here through high school. I was really grounded in the city, and then I went and left for college. Was in and out throughout my 20s, traveling, going to college, grad school, living in Spain, and then came back to Milwaukee in 2020 in the pandemic. I was a pandemic grad school grad who had no graduation but a global health crisis. So
that was the gift given from the world.
Right. So I came home because I studied international social work. That was my master's degree. And obviously going abroad was like a little dicey at that point. So instead of trying to like make it work, like all my jobs were like canceled, like we're not hiring, like we don't know what's going on kind of vibe. I ended up moving back home and getting a job. And through there, I got to know the city as an adult a bit more intimately. I had done a year in AmeriCorps before grad school and right after I had lived in Spain. So I came back previously, but that was only temporary for that year. And then I went to grad school and thought I was going to go somewhere else after grad school. So yeah, I've experienced Milwaukee as a youth, as a child, as a young adult, now a 30 something adult. So, kind of all different stages in and out as I've experienced other things. I've always found my way back home.
I love that. Could you actually talk a little bit more in terms of what did Black Milwaukee feel like for you as a childhood, and then how did that evolve in young adulthood and now in your early 30s?
I think for me, I think when you grow up around Black people, you don't think of it as like a Black Milwaukee. You just think of it as your regular day to day. It was just like we did these things, we went to these places. I think for me, because neither one of my parents are from Milwaukee, like my mom moved here and my dad followed her. And then I was born here. My older brother was born here. My younger brother was born here. So we're all like first generation Milwaukeean for the most part. So I think because of that, my parents, they divorced when I was young, but both of them had to kind of create their own communities in the city. And so, because when you move somewhere you don't have no family, you got to have some people. And I think through there, they built these little micro Black Milwaukee communities for me in very different ways. My dad was really into sports and he worked in the public school system. So a lot of his friends were like track coaches and so I had like this athletic version of Black Milwaukee growing up. I was at like track and field games, traveling around the city when I was 3, 4 years old, really young, doing all that stuff with him. And then with my mom, she is a Lutheran minister by profession. So I grew up around a lot of Black Lutherans, which I didn't know wasn't a thing. I didn't know being Black and Lutheran was an anomaly because that's who I was around growing up. So I had this little microcosm of Black Lutherans who I was always kind of with at like services or when she was preaching somewhere or events and stuff. I had a I had a lot of variety, which I think is not a narrative that if you Google Milwaukee, you'll probably see. The most segregated city in America is kind of the tagline you often see, and that just wasn't my reality. Like, yes, the city is redlined and segregated for reasons that were outside of Black Milwaukeeans' control, but it didn't mean that we didn't go all over the city. Just because the north side of Milwaukee, where I grew up, is predominantly Black. That's where a lot of the Black population lives. But I was all over the city doing all kind of things. So as a kid, I don't think I was fully conscious of it. And then I kind of grew up and then you kind of learn the history of the city, like in high school. And then young adulthood, I'm going to college, reading about all these cities, which got me interested in Milwaukee. Then I'm back home and I'm seeing things because now I'm older. So now I've experienced more life out the cities. Like, yeah, it is weird that when you cross this line between a Black neighborhood and a white neighborhood, one, that they are racially divided, but also two, that the streets are unpaved on our side of the road and they're paved on the other side of the road. So it became things like that I think I started to understand as an adult that I wasn't really conscious of being a kid because I was like a little Black girl with pigtails who want to play double dutch, and be shy around cute boys and read books. That was kind of what I wanted to do. And I think, I don't know, my parents did a really good job of giving me a childhood in a city where I have a lot of friends who were not given that due to how the city has historically not treated Black people. And so the older you get, it puts your childhood into more perspective. Also talking to my parents and hearing about what was going on, around the city at the time. Like, I know I've heard of the gun violence. I've been around the car crashes. Like, so there was always stuff going on. But as a kid, I couldn't contextualize it. And so now as adulthood, I can talk about it, because I have the life experiences. And also because I've educated myself, I've had people who taught me Milwaukee history. I can talk about it at the same time. So it's kind of like a twofold situation now in my 30s, rediscovering the city, I think a little bit every day as an adult.
No, that makes sense. It sounds like you were given a strong sense of community in various ways, whether it was through the church or through athletics as well. And so you experienced it very differently. You also mentioned that your parents are not originally from Milwaukee. So could you talk a little bit more about where their cultural roots are and how that might also have shaped you and your experience in Milwaukee?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because when people think about transplants, like my mom has been in Milwaukee longer than she's been in her hometown of Pittsburgh at this point. I'll be 32 this year. My older brother is 34. Hold on, let me do the math. Okay, she's been here like 37 years, I think, roughly. So somewhere around there, between 35 and 37-ish years. And so I think that's really a unique experience in the city because a lot of people who live in Milwaukee are from here, have roots here. People move away, come back all the time. But for a transplant like her to stay for so long is kind of an anomaly in the city for sure. And I think one that was intentional on her part. I've heard her tell the story of how she was offered higher paying jobs in other cities, but somehow she was moved to come to Milwaukee. For her, it's always about, she's a minister, so she got her, her Black minister voice. and whatnot too, which I grew up around. So it was more of this was her purpose. She just felt like she had to be here and she's been here ever since. And I think knowing that's part of her story made me appreciate the city, but more when I got older, when I understood her story, not when I was a kid going through puberty. I had no understanding of that kind of stuff. But I think having parents who weren't from here, because my dad's from St. Louis. And so it was like an East Coast, Midwest mix. It's like a double migration. Like on my dad's side, my grandparents were from Mississippi. And on my mom's side, a lot of our family's in Pittsburgh, but we have roots in Alabama. So they just kept coming more north,
Right.
essentially,
Yes.
as they kind of migrated up. And so I always say I'm like a great granddaughter of the Great Migration because my people kept just going north to the cold,
Just
honey.
keep inching further up.
Right, all the way up. I think it's interesting that they settled in Milwaukee, not Chicago, right? Because it's kind of the big city in the Midwest. My mom got offered a job here. She said she'll be here for 3 years. It's been 35 to 37, I forget how many. Oh, yeah, I think having parents that were really rooted in here in the city was really helpful for me to understand the city a bit more. And because my mom was figuring out the city as she was raising kids, and so that also played a role. And my dad has since moved down back south to Texas, but my mom is still here. She's really grounded in community work and just a lot of urban agriculture work and food justice work. So I think that has also shaped my understanding of the city and the history too, because they're both educators in their own right. And that kind of made me interested in the education and research and all that good stuff now as an adult.
I'm curious, what is some of that history that you've dug into that has been surprising to learn about Milwaukee?
I don't know if anything has been necessarily surprising. I just feel like in the scheme of when you think about Black Midwestern cities, people know about, Motown and Detroit. Chicago is Chicago, like one of my favorite cities in the world. And so I think when we think of Milwaukee, people one don't understand there are Black folks here, which I did not know until I left the city. People were surprised I was from Milwaukee, which I'm like, well, regardless, the Great Migration went to all these like different places. So I think it was surprising how much I knew when I learned that other people didn't know stuff about Milwaukee. Like a lot of people in Milwaukee have roots in Louisiana, Mississippi, Arkansas. I have friends whose families have been here for generations. Growing up, we celebrated Juneteenth like it was already a federal holiday. I didn't know it wasn't a holiday for real for everybody else until I went to college. Because I was like, what y'all mean y'all know what Juneteenth is? I will be talking about Juneteenth. I went to school in Illinois. And I'm like, yeah, well, Juneteenth. They're like, what's Juneteenth? For a Black kid from Milwaukee, everybody know what Juneteenth, even the white kids know. Brown kids, everyone knows what Juneteenth is if you are in proximity to Black people in the city. So if you go to inner city school, they were talking about Juneteenth. So I think that was one of the things too, just realizing how much history is here. It's been here since like the 70s. So knowing that wasn't a thing that other cities really celebrated until 2020 was when it became like a thing.
That was my case,
Yeah.
coming from Brooklyn, New York. Unfortunately, you heard about Juneteenth, but it really did not become a thing in New York until the last 5 years.
Yeah, that's crazy. It's been around Milwaukee since the 70s. Like even my mom says she didn't know much about it until she moved here. And so I feel like a lot of what I learned was through her lens. And now I'm kind of getting older, learning about more of the politics of the city. As I'm 30 some years old and maybe we got some things that need to change around here. So, doing more of that like work in history. I think even now, I was just talking to one of my friends, even the foods that I grew up eating that I didn't realize were like not just Black Milwaukee, but Black Midwestern culture, like catfish and spaghetti, like a really big debate about that. And is it a side dish? Do they go together? And like for me over here, it belongs on the same plate. I don't know about y'all, but that is the same thing. But again, those are things that I was experiencing, but I didn't know were unique to me until obviously you meet other people. There's what do you mean?
Because I'm hearing catfish and spaghetti. I'm like, those two don't go together. But growing up Haitian, what went together was spaghetti and hot dogs or spaghetti and sausage.
Yeah, no, for us, I just had some yesterday, my first of the season, honey. I'm so excited to have some more as the season goes out. But hearing these stories, and obviously a lot of it is rooted in the South, right? A lot of Black people came from the South. So it just traveled a lot by train and also just by migration to the Midwest. But I think that's been, I guess, to answer your question, that's been the surprising part is just knowing how much people brought culture up here and how much that shaped my experience, even though my parents weren't necessarily from Milwaukee. I am, so I experienced all of these things that my parents didn't experience in their childhoods. And I think from a traveler perspective, it also got me accustomed to being on the road. Some people ask me, how do I sit in a train for 20 hours? I'm like, I've done road trips from Milwaukee to New Orleans, Milwaukee to Pittsburgh, which is like 12 hours. Milwaukee, New Orleans is like 18 plus hours. Milwaukee to St. Louis is 6. Like I've always been on the road because my family's been elsewhere. So I also got accustomed to like knowing the city, but also traveling because of where my parents chose to like raise me away from their like immediate family. So a lot of that also sprinkled into kind of, I guess, who I am now too.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds like travel is just built into your DNA really early on.
Yeah, it definitely is. I didn't realize it. Again, people are like, well, how do you sit there? I'm like, the stuff I bring on the train, now we have like podcasts and phones. I had like a SpongeBob SquarePants CD player that I would have like in the back of our Tahoe. I have a lot of brothers, and I grew up primarily as the only girl for most of my childhood. So it was just me and like 4 stinky boys. And so, I had to bring my stuff to stay focused because it was going to irritate me and be passing gas in the back of the Tahoe. So I had my headphones on, I had my book, I had my words. There were just still things, if you watching my content, I still bring with me because that's where I learned it. Those road trips taught me how to eventually, in a lot of ways, ride the train kind of now in my adulthood.
Yes, which we'll definitely dig into that train travel. Since you mentioned your experience with Juneteenth, I was wondering what other moments that would capture Milwaukee in your experience.
And my family, like with the whole travel stuff, we also, as much as I was in Black Milwaukee, I was also not in Black Milwaukee spaces because of the way, my mom was a Lutheran minister. Lutherans, I learned later, were like predominantly white. And so I will be at white churches as much as I would be in Black churches. So became the older I got, the more cognizant I became of the Black Milwaukee spaces and the non-Black Milwaukee spaces and how the cultural norms were different and how the way I showed up, I don't say it was different, but it was like, oh, my friends aren't here. The faces I'm used to seeing aren't here. And so how do you navigate that? Especially in a state like Wisconsin where Milwaukee is Black, like pretty Black, but the state is not. And so my mom would have other engagements around the state in cities or in the suburbs. A lot of them are predominantly white. That's when it became kind of like, oh, I do live a different experience over here. Even though my mom kind of put us a little bit of everywhere, we were still grounded on the north side, which was Black. So that was not a culture shock, but it was like, okay, it's different. Y'all act different. Y'all eat different over here. Like, little things that you kind of clock as a kid that you kind of look back on and they're like, oh, that was a segregation. That was the redlining, like why I saw the street lights turn on over here, not over there. So I think that kind of also shaped my Black Milwaukee experience. But I saw Black people all the time. So it was just like, no matter where I was outside of the suburbs, I would say, there are Black folks.
I appreciate you sharing that because people don't realize everywhere has Black people, but obviously it occurs in very different degrees in terms of percentages when we're talking about demographics, also in terms of concentrations, which is why I like to dig into cities too, because I think generalizing a state and just being like the Milwaukee experience is the Wisconsin experience is also not appropriate too, because I imagine Madison, Wisconsin, for example, was probably a very different Black experience than the Milwaukee experience.
It is. It is. And I had a lot of friends because my high school had like a feeder college, like a college where a lot of people went to, and that was UW-Madison. And a lot of them went and were like, yeah, Madison is white, And so it was culture shock. Madison's only like an hour away or so not far, but it is a different kind of experience that I actually don't know a lot of Black folks from Madison. I met a few through my previous job on different projects. We did some work in Dane County, which is like the Madison area, but yeah, it's a very different kind of experience. So to your point, people definitely can't generalize states because there are pockets of us in like Kenosha and Racine. There's pockets all over, really primarily southeastern Wisconsin, but I've been to northern Wisconsin. I saw some Black folks. I'm like, what y'all doing up here? How is it up here? What's the vibe? And so I think that's kind of, to your earlier question, the biggest difference between being a child in Milwaukee or like a child in Wisconsin and an adult is like I'm able to have like the freedom to go find all of these experiences and connect with people in a way that obviously when I was a kid, I wasn't thinking about that. I wanted to just be a kid.
You were just trying to be outside. Basically. But now you have language, you also have historical context too as you navigate Milwaukee or around Wisconsin.
Yeah, you see it a lot more. I think I credit a lot of that too because I did my AmeriCorps year here. It was like 2 years after I graduated undergrad. So I graduated, I went to school in Illinois, graduated from there, went to Spain for a year and came back and worked at Girl Scouts of Wisconsin Southeast. And through that program called Public Allies, I got a lot of the language and history that like I had seen, but I didn't know there was like words in like my young adulthood to really talk about what I was seeing. And I got to learn the city for the first time as an adult during that era when I was like 22-ish or so. And then to come back, a few years later, I really got to know more of the history in the process. Because again, you don't really have the historical context. For real, you can sense something is going on or something's happening. Why is it that when I can only take the bus up to a certain point and then, I cross the bridge and the whole bus demographic changed from Black people to white people? Like I didn't have the language to describe what that was, when I was a kid. So yeah, it definitely changes as you get older.
Speaking of language, if you had to describe Black Milwaukee in 3 words, what would it be and why?
It's so hard. I think we are unserious in the sense we always don't crack a joke. I think it's a very looking culture, or I don't know if they still say ribbon culture, like talking about people that's kind of what it is. And I say unserious because if you know the history of the city of the redlining, of segregation, folks need to laugh. Folks need to find joy in the midst of all of it. And so the joking, that's how it is. And that's like a big part of the city, especially even like our music culture. One of the rappers here, for Frank, he got most famous because he used like Dora the Explorer in a rap song, so it's just
Oh,
like,
man.
like we got jokes, like we're unserious, so like laugh with us because if you don't laugh, you're gonna be struggling, and so I think that's one of the main words. Okay, I'm gonna cheat with the second one. It's technically a phrase we say,
Okay.
and it's on what? So ON space WHAT. And I did not realize I say this a lot until people say, girl, what does that mean? And there's actually a really great documentary called The Heartland that came out a few years ago that talks about this. One of my homegirls, Radea, is on there explaining it perfectly. So I'm not going to try to replicate what she says. But on what is a phrase we say, and it has a multiple connotations. So, Dr. Franny, if you tell me, oh, so and so got pregnant, on what? You're like Sojourner, so and so died. Dang, on what? It's like it has varying like categories of understanding based on the context of what it is. So when I think of Black Milwaukee, I always think of that phrase because apparently other people don't say it.
Yeah, I definitely don't say that. So.
It's very much Milwaukee culture, but it's like, oh, you a graduated period on what? Like it can be positive, negative, vicious. Like it has a lot of different things. So that's my second word, quickly. And then I would say my third word to describe Milwaukee. Oh, it was the hardest question to think about, to be honest. I don't like the word resilient because I feel like people use that with Black folks way too much to make us justify bad living conditions. So I will say, I guess persevering instead of resilience. Like I think in spite of, I wrote a piece a few years ago right after Biden got elected and everyone was thanking, the cities that saved America. It was from Time Out. And I said it's really hard to love a city that doesn't always love you back. And so I feel like perseverance is a word I would describe Black Milwaukee because in spite of all the other things that we got going on and all the external forces that try to tell us, who we are, who we should be, we keep going. We keep thriving, we keep trying to figure it out. And, not everybody's story is a happy one. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but I do think there is a level of perseverance in the city to keep hoping for something better, and something different to come, for sure.
If you are enjoying learning about the Black experience, explore more on my blog. I share traveling while Black reflections from Vermont to Iceland and beyond, including vibes, safety, and comfort based on my Support Black scorecard. Visit frannythetraveler.com for more. I want to actually dig into now your train travel. So obviously, aside from being known from being Milwaukee, which you rep that hard, you also rep being a train travel queen. And so what sparked that love of train travel for you?
So I don't like driving. There is not a situation in this world, unless it was life or death for somebody that I love, that I would like to be behind the wheel of anything. Unless I was in South Carolina and I definitely drove a boat. A little boat. So there are exceptions to the rule. But I'm just not a fan of driving. And so for most of my young adulthood, I found ways to avoid driving as much as possible. And for a long time, like I used to be on a Greyhound. I went to school in Peoria, Illinois. I used to be on the Peoria charter coming home. I used to be on all kind of like transportation. Eventually I discovered the train, but the train for me was always a way to get somewhere. It was never like a tourist thing for me until about 2021 when we're all kind of in the pandemic. I was in this room, probably over there at my desk when it was rearranged differently. And I went down a deep dive of like, okay, I want to go somewhere, but I don't want to fly. I don't want to deal with quarantine. When you have to quarantine for 2 weeks, if you got COVID, I'm like, I don't have 2 week money for a hotel. Like that's like on top of the trip itself. So I said, you know what? Let me do some US travel. And I look up US bucket list and then I saw Amtrak in the mountains. I said, well, what is Amtrak doing in the mountains? Like, we don't have mountains over here in the Midwest, number one. Number two, what do you mean the train goes through the mountains? Like, I was very confused. So I went down. I was definitely tipsy. A little wine was definitely in me, down a little deep dive on YouTube about like the train travel world. And one of my favorite channels I used to watch was the married couple, Grounded Life Travel, I think is their name. And they were all over the Amtrak. So I'm like, let me see what they doing. They were just taking the train everywhere. I said, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean? So because I'm curious, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna take the train to California. I had never been to California at that point. And so I'm like, you know what? I live in Milwaukee. I can get to Chicago easily. Say, you know, if I'm going to only ride the train once in my life, I'm gonna do like the roomette. I'm gonna do the most scenic ride. In my mind, this was like a one and done thing. I had no intention of riding the train more than once. And then I got on the train. I'm like, this is actually kind of nice. Like, I can just sit here. I'm like also a traveling homebody, which means I like to travel. Also, I like to be at my house. Like, I like to be at home at the same time. And so when you're on the train, you kind of get the best of both worlds when you get like a room. It feels like home. I can bring my things to do, download some movies, have my PJs on, you know, kind of make it feel like a little room for real. But then I get views and I'm going somewhere. So I'm still traveling, but I still get my homebody, you know, tendencies. And so once I realized I enjoyed it, I posted on social, not thinking much of it. It blew up across TikTok. Two of these were my first videos to really start popping off on YouTube and Instagram. And they're like, keep riding the train. I say, well, you know what? This is a niche I can stick with. Like, I do like this. I feel like as a creator, you're always kind of trying new things, trying to see what you like. It's kind of how you figure out, you know, your voice online. Who knew that mine was going to be through train travel?
I love that because you're the first person I hear just opting into not driving who actually knows how to drive. Because in my case, born and raised in New York City, I am still one of the folks who don't know how to drive at all. So I have figured out how to navigate this country in all types of ways. And Amtrak and other trains has definitely been one of those ways. Also, my mother is afraid to fly. We have done the extended ride from New York to New Orleans, New York to Miami. So I understand what you're talking about in terms of just like it is a whole different experience when you are on these trains. It becomes a romanticization of travel for sure.
And people try to argue me on the internet. I'm just like, they're like, you get the same views when you're driving. No, you don't. Stop lying. Like, it's okay to say that there are some things that, like, if you prefer driving because it's cheaper, if you prefer driving because it's X, Y, and Z, that is totally fine, you know, but don't lie to me because I've been on the train. I've been on the train where it's only the train and like the desert. Like there's no highway. There are no streets. You can't get these views over here. And yes, I do have a license. She's for emergency purposes at this point. Just emergency purposes. Okay. Because I think also going to Europe in my younger, like 20s of my formative years also changed how I view public transportation. Because I've been on the bus since I was like 13. So I never minded the bus. But I think in the US, the way we talk about the bus is definitely like from a class perspective of like, people who are lower class, lower income are the ones who need the bus, especially outside of cities like New York, you know, Chicago. Outside of cities that have like a pretty decent subway system. When I went to Europe, it was like, but everybody takes the train over here. Everybody's on the bus. Like, it's not like class ridden thing. It's like my little silent protest of I just feel like we should invest more in public transportation. Trains, buses, ferries, all of that to get around.
No, I agree. And especially because there was points in time where all of that did exist in this country. And then the rise of cars just got rid of all that investment.
It did. And I cursed the day that they did that because we could be all on a train enjoying ourselves. And
Yes. And I know you love to use the term passenger princess.
I am a passenger princess full-heartedly. I love it. I believe everybody deserves to be a passenger princess at least once on a train or otherwise.
Since you talk about the train travel has now become your niche, can you talk a little bit more on your platform, Sojournies, and what is the type of content people can find? Because I know you always talk about it's not just about train travel.
Yeah, so it's kind of a mix. So once I kind of realized that train travel was my jam, and I actually knew a lot about it after riding so many trains, people actually started asking me, okay, girl, great, love the train, but what do you do when you get off the train? And that's kind of how I started sharing more about Black travel and solo travel. Like, I kind of had it from a train perspective. Really, the shift when Instagram became a video platform, I feel like everybody kind of shifted in a way, and we were able to share content in a way that was very different with the TikTokification of social media, of the short form platforms. Because, back in the day, you would do like a cute little twirl on Instagram with a photo and a caption of the things you did. But that's a very different experience of me showing you what I'm eating when I'm on the train, that I'm going to these Black owned businesses, that you're seeing the Black people. I think it changed how folks engaged with social media. And so it was actually easier for me to start sharing more about, yes, trains are great. I do believe, the journey can be part of the destination at the same time with train travel. But also, I take the train, really, if people ask me, I go to eat, I go to art museums, I'm going to throw in a little cooking class or something in there, and I'm going to support Black people. Like, that's really what I do off the train. So I'm like, if y'all want to see that, I started sharing it. And so that's how more of my Black travel stuff started popping up and whatnot, because I think train travel is great and it's beautiful. It's also not always that accessible in the United States, as we all know. And so I didn't want to narrow my platform just to be about just the trains themselves. I wanted to have the holistic kind of experience. Like, the train got me to South by Southwest, and here's what I did. Here's what I ate. Here's the history I learned. The train got me to Niagara Falls. So yeah, I saw Niagara Falls, gorgeous, but also I did all these other things. So it kind of gave me a different way, like a different precursor, like a prerequisite to like creating a travel guide. It wasn't just your regular like travel guide to Niagara Falls, which a lot of people do have and do really well online. It was like, no, here's a little traincation guide, to have me have a little luxurious little weekend in Niagara Falls. So it kind of gave it a different vibe that I think folks were able to kind of say, hey, we like this girl, we're going to follow her. And I kind of grew my platform essentially by showing more of the holistic, yes, here's the train. Also, here's what you see, do, eat, whatever off the train.
You definitely do a good job in showing the pre, middle, and post, truly the whole journey. You show the train as the journey itself, and then what happens once you arrive at the destination. Could you elaborate a little bit more when you mention about the train travel being part of the journey itself?
Yes, I think for me, as someone who does love public transportation, I don't mind sitting down. I don't mind relaxing. I don't want nobody to email me. I do want to disconnect every now and again. And so for me, I think when I booked that first train ride, it got the first sense of what it meant that the journey could be part of the destination, because it was in the middle of the pandemic. I really hadn't had a break, for real, because I thought I would have a little break after graduating, but I graduated in a global health crisis. So I had to get a job. I had to do all these things. And I felt like I went from a very intense 2 years of grad school to then working full time. And then, okay, I needed something. And I think that train ride from Chicago to Embryville was a part of this adventure, was the fact I was able to sit down and just be. Part of the adventure was that I slept a lot on that train ride, actually, though. Like, I was knocked on that train. I was waking up for meals and stuff like that. Part of that train ride, I was talking to people. So, like, you were meeting people. I hadn't really gone anywhere. I hadn't left the train, but I was still having like a very interesting solo travel experience that didn't require me to plan all this stuff once I got off of it. So it made me appreciate those smaller moments that I think I had taken for granted beforehand or just not really thought about beforehand. I don't think anyone glamorizes going through TSA, in the same way that you would glamorize being on a train. And so it gave me a different perspective of like, oh, this can be like the relaxation before I get off the train and go sightseeing and do all these things. So I'm definitely an itinerary warrior. Love a good list of things to do, see, and eat. But that showed me like, no, this is part of the journey too. Sitting down is also part of the journey and part of the experience. And you never know who you're going to meet on the train and the conversations you'll have with people who you probably will never meet again. I have never seen anybody on the train twice, so it, it, it changed my perspective and introduced me to slow travel in a way that wasn't like backpacking Southeast Asia for 3 months. Like it was a different kind of slow travel that I hadn't really experienced that I learned to appreciate along the way.
I get that. I was thinking for our listeners who may be a little hesitant indulging into train travel, what are the pros and cons of train travel and why ultimately should they opt into at least one train trip in their life?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest cons, actually, are slow and they're expensive, especially if you want to do the route map. I think those are the two biggest things that I always see on my platform. Is like, this is great, but I just can't afford the room meta. This is great, but it's just too long for me. I only have this much of PTO, which is a very real reality for a lot of people in the United States. So I never like slight people. I'm like, yeah, like I wish it was more accessible. Like I can't change that. I don't create the rail routes and fund them and all that kind of stuff. I think those are the two biggest like cons of it. And then, I mean, the pros for me, you get to kind of slow down. It is a different way to travel. So I do think, I tell people if it's like your first time, maybe don't book the 3-day train ride across the country. If you're a bit more apprehensive, see what's closest to you, try out a shorter train ride, just see how it feels. I feel like it's definitely a feeling, They also don't have Wi-Fi on a lot of them, which I know is a deal breaker for a lot of people. Not for me, because I don't, again, I like airplane mode. Okay. I like no one's email finding me for a little bit. Okay. Sometimes I enjoy the disconnect, but I know that's definitely a deal breaker for a lot of people. So I think those are the biggest cons. The pros, when you get really gorgeous scenery, I would say it depends on what ride you take and where you're going. Like scenery obviously varies across the country, but it is just a really cool way to travel. I see like a lot of kids on the train. I don't have kids myself, but they're on the train with their like iPads and they're playing cards. They get to meet really cool people. I do a lot of small talk on the train as a solo traveler in particular over meals and whatnot. So that's like gotten me to be more extroverted, I think, over the years and just being comfortable walking up to random people saying, hey, how you doing? Where you from? Just kind of being more conversational. And it's just such a unique way to see the US in a country that is like very much car culture, car culture, car culture. It is a big departure for people. And I think it can be a bit jarring at first of like, oh, well, I just gotta sit here. Like I think also it's a great way to reject hostel culture. I always say that. I'm like, we are taught to go, 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 go all the time. And it's like the one time where maybe you aren't going, going all the time. And, I have a lot of older Black women. Some of them are like, they'll message me saying, like, I just lost my husband. And like riding the train reinvigorated my love of exploration. Or I'll have women like, I just divorced my husband and I'm getting back out here on my solo travel and I took a train trip. And you're right. It's great. I ride the train a lot, way more than the average person because it's now, my job. So I'm not ever saying you have to take the train everywhere because I think that's an unrealistic thing for me to say as knowing the setup of the United States. Like it's just not built for that. They're like the Northeast corridor on the East Coast is more accessible than the majority of the country. I'm just like, just try it out once. I think there's ways for people to go around it. I had somebody say, you know what? I saw your video and I flew to LA to take the train from LA to San Diego. And it was such a beautiful ride. She's like, I can't do a lot of train travel where I'm at, but I'm glad I made time for this one. I think for me, what I've realized is that, there are people who will watch my video and plan a trip to wherever I just went and do a whole train ride. And that is lovely. But there are some people who are like, I have motion sickness. I'm never getting on the train, but I love to see you on it. Or I'm not a big fan of train travel, but I appreciate watching your videos to see, where I can tell my friends to go. So, there's a lot of different ways to do it. There's like tourist trains too. So if you want, I did the wine and cheese train in Cordele, Georgia last year, which was so unexpected, but everyone was in the comments planning a trip like, oh, like this is great because Amtrak doesn't come where I'm at. So this is a nice alternative. So I think, my platform is meant, yes, to inspire folks to train travel and all the pros and cons of like all the things you can do. But at the same time, it's also like, here are your possibilities. You can pick one and decide which one is for you and kind of create the pros and cons, for yourself.
I love that. I remember there was also a video you posted that went viral in terms about the window seat and forever being on a window seat as a pro of going into train travel.
Oh, how could I forget? That's so funny. Yeah, because that video, that's so funny because I don't really do like aesthetic videos often, even though I do have the content for it, I realized through that video. But I love Erica Badu in that song. So I'm like, you know what? This is like train friendly. And I was in Paris when I posted it. I was on time difference. I woke up. I was like, oh crap. The one video where I didn't put like all the information I would normally put in the caption is the one that what are these train rides, blah, blah, blah. So yeah. That's normally
But
how it
I
works.
think there were other things you shared in it too, which
Yeah.
I think people don't realize about train travel. Like, one, you don't have to go through TSA security.
No.
You literally just get on the train and
Yeah.
someone will check your ticket. I also noticed for people who have large families and they're traveling with a lot of luggage, especially the way the airlines are these days, trying to charge people even for a carry-on, train travel makes it a lot cheaper
It
to be able to
does.
literally lug
Yeah.
like
I've had
suitcases.
people say they moved on, like, the train. Like, they packed their stuff up and were able to move from place but I think more like the auto train, I think, which I have not taken, but, yeah, I agree, like, luggage access is a lot easier. They do weigh it so one time I did almost get my bag weighed because she was like, "That's more than 50 pounds, girl." I said, "Shh, don't worry about that, sweetheart. Don't worry about that, sweetheart." I was, like, coming home from, like, a break in, like, college or something like that, and I had a really heavy bag. So, they may side eye your luggage every now and again. But yeah, it's really easy as far as like getting your luggage on and off the train. Now, there is food on the train if you do want that. I think the biggest pro of like the sleeper car is that you do get your meals included. That was a big thing for me because realistically, like you could bring a cooler. If people do bring coolers, I know me as Sojourner, if someone's gonna make my meals for me, I'm going to pay for that. Every time. If I can swing it, I will. I'm like, you know what? Maybe we'll take the train here this time around. So I think that's also a really big pro, like the sleeper cars. I know I haven't tried it yet because it hasn't worked out with my schedule to like make it worth it. But like the rail pass, like what, $4.99, I
Yes,
believe.
I think it's almost 500, but they were giving it, I think, for like
Yeah,
$150
yeah.
this year.
Like the rail pass is good if you want to do a lot of coach rides. I don't think they cover roomettes, but a lot of the coach rides, especially if you want to go to multiple places. I feel like the rail pass, the day I decided to do like not as much long distance, which I'm kind of running out of long distance trains to ride, but the day I like want to do more stops, I would love to try the rail pass. They have the California pass if you're in California, you want to travel on those trains. So there's like a lot of like, oh, some of them are a bit more technical than air travel, but there is a lot of opportunity there, I feel like. And more people I think are trying to demand more of the train travel system. And if my content does that, I'm all for it. And figuring out ways, I think one of my goals for this year is to figure out um like what does train advocacy look like on my page, since I do have the ear of a lot of people who are interested in train travel. How do I translate that from them yelling at me about train travel accessibility to yelling at the representatives about it? Because I'm all for getting people involved in advocacy and policy work. That's the social work side of me. How do we get more people engaged in what's happening kind of with train travel and how our country operates with this? So there's a lot there. But I do think, a train ride at least once in your life is pretty cool. Again, you don't have to do all of them like I do, but I'm here to be the vessel to show you all the possibilities and people can make the best decision for them based off where they are at. Though I will say the Alaska Railroad is one you probably can't ride to, but if you do go to Alaska, I highly recommend those trains. So those are some of the most beautiful trains I've seen so far.
That's actually a great transition to my question. What are some train trips that you would recommend for the first time traveler? And what are some that you would recommend for a more advanced train traveler?
I think for first time travelers, the train closest to you is helpful. I think just to try it out. Or if you're already going to a place, saying, okay, maybe I'll take the train somewhere. A lot of places that our tourist hotspots do have trains. So, like, if you fly to New York for a trip, maybe hop on a train to go to DC. It's like 2 hours. So I think if you are new to but don't want to plan your whole PTO around it because you don't want to spend 3 days on the train, thinking about where you're already going, and maybe you can tack on like a train experience for your first time if there isn't like a lot of trains near you. One of my favorite short rides, well, I live in Milwaukee, so I'm always going to Chicago on the Hiawatha. It's not very scenic, not going to lie, but it gets you from downtown Milwaukee to downtown Chicago. Like, it's very nice, carless activity. Chicago Park ain't nothing to play with. So I definitely love that one for my Midwest girlies, especially if you're already going to Chicago, come to Milwaukee for like, the day or a day and a half or whatever you have to spare. I love LA to San Diego for like a shorter ride. Any California train is like really pretty for the most part, I would say. I've done short trains like Boston to Portland, Maine, which is like the down easter. So that is fun. I feel like it's harder in the South to find shorter trains. I haven't taken it yet, but I know there's the New Orleans to Mobile, the Mardi Gras one that just reopened last year.
That is on my radar. Haven't taken
Yeah.
it yet either, but I think I got a
Yeah.
few stops on the way to take.
Yeah, so that one sounds really cool. I know they have like the Bright Line in Florida that goes to a bunch of the cities. So there's some out there, trying to figure out if you live like in Denver, take it through the Rocky Mountains. Like don't take the whole California Zephyr. So I'll always say like whether you're new, intermediate, or advanced, if you don't want to take the whole route, take the most scenic part of the train. So if you're going to Glacier already, hop on a train from East Glacier to I don't know what to Whitefish. Hop on a train for a few stops and then get off and explore the rest of Glacier. There's ways around it. It just takes a bit of planning. And so if you're more advanced, obviously doing the longer distance rides. I love the California Zephyr. Obviously, it's like the most coveted Amtrak ride in the country. So that one's always really fun. I love the Empire Builder from Chicago. You go to Seattle or Portland. If you want to go to Canada, they do have the 3 routes to Canada. If you're looking for a fall ride, I'll say it's a bit more intermediate because it's like a 12-hour ride and it's technically quicker to drive than to go there, but from New York to Montreal, it's gorgeous to the Adirondacks. The most gorgeous part is actually through upstate New York. So if you just want to go through upstate New York, you could also just do that and not actually go all the way across the border to Montreal. The Cascades, also really good for like intermediate train travelers, I would say. People are maybe new travelers who are interested in like a longer train ride. Portland to Vancouver, Canada is really nice. You go through Puget Sound. It's gorgeous during sunset, lots of nature. So there's a lot of pockets of really cute rides. And if none of those are again near you, look up like tourist trains. I've been trying to find more tourist trains to recommend to folks who maybe don't have Amtrak as readily accessible to them. Like I did the Cape Cod Railroad in Hyannis, Massachusetts, like a little dinner train. Also, when you're thinking of whether you're a beginner, intermediate, or advanced traveler or train traveler, it doesn't all have to be like a 3-day train ride. It can be like an hour and a half. It can be a 2-hour train ride, but it does require a bit more research. But the Cape Cod Railroad is cool. I had the Sam Short Line Wine and Cheese train in Cordele. And yeah, I'm trying to find more trains.
You also did Napa too with your
Oh yeah,
mom,
I did Napa with my
right?
mom. How could I
Yes.
forget? What a time. We had great girls trip. So again, if you're going to Napa, you might as well.
Right. Exactly. It sounds like you just gotta Google like what
Yeah.
are mini rides. When I went to Vermont, I found out they
Oh
also
yeah.
had a dinner train ride. And then recently I just discovered Waterbury, Connecticut, because I'm trying to venture more into that state. And they do a chocolate decadence train
Yeah.
ride where you take the train and then you get to get off and make your own chocolate.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I found that one. I hadn't heard about the one in Vermont, but there's so many. There's so many if you just like look up dinner train, wine train, tourist train in whatever city state you're in that I think don't get the right promotion. So I'm trying to get them to hire me so I can go create this content for y'all so y'all can figure out which ones you kind of wanna get on because they're out there. There's like a Finger Lakes wine train if you're in the Finger Lakes region in New York. There's just so many. So no matter where you're at, beginner, intermediate, advanced, like there is a train ride, for you to try. Yeah, just really figuring out if sitting is right for you. It's really the baseline. Once you can figure out how long you can sit, then I think you can figure out which trains are best.
That is a valid point. And I think this is a good transition to the favorite part of my show, which is a Black travel roundup. So this will be your curated guide for Black owned spots and culture gems that make your city what it is. And so for listeners at this part of the podcast, this is probably where you should be taking a ton of notes. Get that pen and paper or the notes app on your phone. So first, start off with the question for Black travelers who've never been, what makes Milwaukee special and why should they put it on their list?
I think Milwaukee is special because people don't know about it. It's like, it surprises you, like, oh, I thought y'all live on a farm around here. No, we are a city. We have streets, we have cars, we have bikes. So I feel like it's just a really cool city to get to know because to your point, there are so many interesting pockets around the city. So it's a place I think really meant for folks who are willing to explore, who are willing to kind of see like what's going on. Everything's not going to be downtown. Okay. The Black folks are not, a lot of us are not downtown as prevalent as it may be in other cities. So you might have to go to Northside, go to hole in the wall restaurants. I think we do that very well. Scroll Facebook. Somebody is selling some dinner somewhere outside, out of their house, and I feel like that's really big of the culture here. It's like a lot of people who are, cooking on the side, have a full-time job, but make real good catfish and spaghetti dinners, really taking the time to get to know the city because it is very special. We're goofy. Like, we're going to joke with you. We might talk about you a little bit, but it's all love. It's definitely all love. And like, people are just eager to kind of, I think, meet other folks too and see where you're from and kind of have that experience. Even though it might be a little closed off at first, like, who are you? What you doing here? Blah, blah, blah. But if you're in a Black space, you're like, okay, come here. Okay, go here, go there, do that, do this. They'll like give you like all the recommendations too.
And I will confirm that has been my experience. I visited Milwaukee one time and literally that is what happened. I felt a strong sense of community, but it took a person who's ingrained into the community who I met who was running a paint and sip, and then I bumped into him somewhere else. And so he's like, come over here. Let me introduce you to some people. And they're like, oh, she visited from New York. And they're like, why are you here from New York? But once we got past all of that,
They will ask you that. They'll ask you, like, how did you end up here? Again, people don't be ended up here. Like, what do you mean? Yeah. No, I love
but it felt like a warm hug after we got through all the introductions.
Yeah. Get through the intros and then make a decision.
Absolutely. So if someone had one day to spend in Black Milwaukee, walk us through it. Where are we going? Morning, afternoon, evening? Are we starting in a certain neighborhood to roam? What are we doing?
Oh, that is so good. I'm actually working with the Black Travel Summit to make a Black Milwaukee food tour, hopefully, for the summit this fall. So this is like what I've been brainstorming, how to bring people to like where I would go. But in the morning, let's see. I would say one of the breakfast spots that's Black owned is Rise and Grind. So that's, you want like a little breakfast sandwich. That's a place you could go to get it. There's also like a bakery on King Drive, Confectionately Yours. That's also a good spot for like breakfast sandwich. So yeah, that's kind of like morning. So I'll take you to one of those places, depending upon like what you want. I have to ask you, what kind of vibe you want. And then let's imagine the person's like work remote or need like a little cafe vibe for a little few hours. Say you didn't use your PTO like you're supposed to. You kind of flubbing the system. I would take you to Fruition Cafe. It's like a co-working space, and so it's a newer Black owned spot in the city. Who would love to support Tiffany over there. They also apparently, I haven't had it yet. I hope to get it sometime between, because my mom talks about it. She's like a really good biscuit. So if you want like a little snacky snack at some point, kind of like a little rest spot before we really get the day started. As far as like things to do, it really would depend on like the season. So hopefully you're coming in summertime because, well, if I'm your guide, you're not going to be here in winter because I'm not guiding nobody in snow. So let's do summer festival. Hopefully one of the summer festivals are going on. Maybe you hear during Juneteenth, or, there's like Locust Street Festival. There's like a bunch of other like Black festivals going on in the city. So I would we would pop into one of the festivals that's going on. And if we go to a festival that's not predominantly Black, there definitely be Black vendors who you could support while you're there. And we have a lot of those going on. Let's see, for shopping, there's a place called the Sherman Phoenix that we could go to as well. And I will take you in there. My mom runs the co-op inside. So we will go in there. She makes herbal body products. There's like a bunch of other stuff you can buy. So like it's really great like souvenirs that support Black
I was
owned
gonna say, I actually
businesses.
bought these earrings
I
in
was gonna say,
Sherman Phoenix.
are those J. Riley earrings? Like
I think so.
yeah, Jamila. I would say go in Jamila if you like crochet things. She makes really dope earrings. Also food there. There's Richmond's for soul food. It's kind of like a little marketplace. So there's Richmond's soul food if you want more soul food, or you can get just for you catering. I love Latanya. I get her smacking salmon and smacking chicken. It's like a rice. She won't tell me what's actually in it. She be guarding the recipe, but it's like her signature dish. So hopefully you're here on a Saturday because you normally have that on Saturdays. So we would definitely stop by there, hang out for a little bit, get your souvenirs, get your stuff you want to bring home to folks. Also like the afternoon. I feel like I just keep eating. So every place I'm like, well, we're gonna keep eating throughout the whole day. Hopefully we may pop into like the art museum. They have like a Black exhibit going on. It really depends on the time of year, but they have that. Our art museum is beautiful. It's a very beautiful art museum. It's like wings and everything. So it's really gorgeous. So there's like a nice Black exhibit. We'll pop in there. We also have the Black Holocaust Museum. So from a bit deeper, a bit heavier. And that's more in the like Bronzeville area, which is like one of the historically Black neighborhoods in the city. So definitely hop over there. And then after that, we kind of walk around that neighborhood because, everybody's safe on the King Drive. So that King Drive is right there. There's a bunch of Black owned businesses. If you want like tea, Honeybee Sage, and wellness is over there. Maybe there's like a bouquet making class at 41 Floral. It's a Black owned spot on King Drive too. A little romanticize your time in Milwaukee with a bouquet of flowers. I think what else is over. There's just so much over in that little area. So it's like a nice little area to walk around and kind of see what's going on. And then for like in there, now there's a lot of I'm not a hookah lounge girl, okay? So they do exist. I don't know where they are. I'm not like that's not my vibe, but if you want that vibe, it's definitely here in the city. There are also some other lounges and clubs that are Black owned, like Truth and Brownstone. So if you want that kind of vibe. But if you want dinner and drinks, kind of more of a youthful setting, 1700 Pull Up has really cheap drinks that are very strong. Okay. One in my Midwest, there's gonna be alcohol in the drinks. Okay. So be careful. They're gonna look cute. But I would see if they have any availability because I like it. It's a nice little vibe. Kind of a younger audience. I feel like it's like that's kind of harder to find in the city outside of like the traditional like bar, clubs and stuff like that. So if you want some good food and drinks before going to like a Truth or a Brownstone, and that's where I would say. And actually in the morning, if you were into yoga, I would take you to Embody. It's a Black owned wellness studio. If you were into hot yoga or something, I would take you there. And then we'll get a biscuit or something after that.
That is so good. You drop so many gems. No matter what your interest is, there is something in Milwaukee for you to do.
Yeah, I mean, if you got a day or two, I can show you a lot. I think that's also what I like about the city. It's not overwhelming. You can come here and kind of choose your own adventure. Maybe do a little research, but you can find kind of what you need and what you really are looking for. And there may be some spaces that, if you want to go to the ballet, you can go to ballet. It may not be the most Black space in the entire world, but there's enough here to kind of gauge your interest to kind of create your own like kind of adventure.
If this is inspiring your next trip, I can help make your planning simple. I offer done with you consultations, done for you custom travel itinerary services, and ready to book detailed itineraries. All services are based on my expertise and personal experience of visiting over 40 states and 35 countries. Visit frannythetraveler.com to learn more. I think since you put us so well on to Black Milwaukee, for this rapid fire, this is going to be related to US train travel. So for each of these categories, you're going to give what first pops into your mind. Don't overthink it. If you can't narrow it down, you can give 2 to 3 reps max for each of these categories. All right. First, Longest train ride you've taken?
The California Zephyr was 52 hours. Chicago to Emeryville.
Most scenic train trip?
California Zephyr, particularly the Denver, like the Rocky Mountains route, which also, if you want more luxury, the Canyon Spirit is the Rockies to the Red Rocks. That probably was actually a bit more scenic because we went through like Moab. So they both go through the same place, but one's more luxury than the other one, but still very scenic.
Most luxurious train trip?
It was the Rockies. The Canyon Spirit, definitely the most luxurious train ride I've ever been on. Oh wait, I lied. Alaska Railroad might actually be more scenic than.
So you could give 2 racks?
Yes. I'm a backtrack. I'm so sorry, y'all. Most scenic, Amtrak, California Zephyr, particularly the part through the Rocky Mountains, and Alaska Railroad Coastal Classic Train from Anchorage to Seward. Very beautiful. And the most luxurious one, to answer your last question, also goes to the Rockies, but it's the Canyon Spirit, Rockies to the Red Rocks. Very luxurious experience, honey. Love that one too.
Most turn up train ride?
In the U.S.?
Yes.
Oh, it was the Napa Valley Wine Train for sure. Mom and I had a blast for sure. If you're going to say not U.S., it would have been the Jose Cuervo Express.
Next door neighbor. So for people who need to know,
not U.S. would have been the Jose Cuervo Express, but U.S. definitely the Napa Valley Wine Train. That was a good time.
Most underrated train ride?
Underrated. I'm gonna say this one not because it's the most scenic, but just because people don't know you can take the train there. Is the New York to Niagara Falls. I feel like a lot of people don't know you can take the train to the Canadian side. So I would say that one's pretty underrated.
Valid point, yes. What is a train ride that surprised you?
That surprised me. Probably Chicago to Los Angeles, because I'd already done like the 3 most scenic ones, like the California Zephyr, Empire Builder from Chicago to Seattle, and the Coast Starlight from LA to Seattle. I was like, this is like the 4th one on everybody's list. So I was like, okay, expecting cute views, but not like whatever. Going through the Southwest is beautiful. Like I don't travel through the Southwest enough, and I feel like that route did a really good job of showing me where I want to go back to, especially Albuquerque and New Mexico as a state. I would love to do more.
Reminded me, I haven't been to New Mexico yet, but I've heard the Albuquerque to Santa Fe. I think that's a beautiful sunset ride.
Yes, I want to take that train for sure.
A train that you would ride again and again.
Again and again. I mean, I'd be on the Hiawatha. I'd be going to Chicago a lot. So I feel like I have to say that one. I take White a bit, but also I've taken the LA to San Diego one a few times too. Those are like 2 of my favorite short rides.
And then a one and done train ride.
I used to say the Empire Builder was a one and done, not because I didn't like it, but I was just like, I don't know if I need to like do it again. I think I'll say New York City to Montreal, not because I wouldn't go back to Montreal, because like the most of it is through New York State. So I feel like I don't need to go all the way up again to go to Montreal to experience, like to enjoy Montreal. Like I could definitely just pop on a flight, just to go for like a jazz.
It'll be a lot quicker. For sure.
Yeah. I can just like pop on a flight. So it was a very beautiful ride. Definitely recommend it for fall foliage, but like doing it again, like I don't know if it would be, have the same like awe factor.
That makes sense. And then what's your next train trip?
That's a fantastic question. Where am I going? My schedule is not my own. I feel like I don't know where I'm going most of the time. Let me think. I have a lot of travel coming up. Actually, not trains for the first time. I am staying in the Train Hotel again in Chattanooga, so that's exciting. The Hotel Chalet. If you want a train experience, but not actually be on a train, it's a really cute hotel rooms that they converted using train cars. So that's a fun one. Where am I going? I feel like I have a train ride. Actually, I don't think I have any trains booked right now. Dr. Franny?
Wow, the train travel queen is trained out.
I feel like I don't have any train rides booked. Oh, I'm definitely going to Chicago at some point this summer because I love going to Chicago in the summer. But that's the only one I can think of like immediately. I feel like I'm just now planning my like summer calendar to see
that makes sense.
Go. Actually, I lied. I'm going to Wisconsin Dells on the train, which is like a water park area. I used to go there growing up with my family, and I'm actually going to partner with them to take the train from Milwaukee to Wisconsin Dells, like 2-hour train ride. So hopefully, like my mom can come with me and we can have a cute little 2-day girl adventure in Wisconsin Dells. That's where I'm going. Yeah, that's my next train ride, I think. before Chicago or after Chicago.
So you got some shorter train rides
Yeah,
coming.
I'm trying to find shorter train rides for folks. I feel like I've done a lot of the long distance ones. So if it means that I have to fly somewhere, then take a train to show y'all the experience, that's kind of where I'm at right now. So it takes a bit more planning on my end.
Well, we appreciate you doing the work for us because somebody's got to do it.
You
So you
know,
are the girl.
all the day's work. You know, what do I have to do? Ride the trains. There are worse things I could be spending my time doing.
So as we start to close, I just wanted to ground us in a brief reflection. So finish this sentence. Unlocking Black journeys means.
I would say using the freedom of movement our ancestors fought for wisely.
Oh, that's deep. I have to follow up with say more. Can't leave it on that.
I think we're in an era, especially now, where Black people, I'm talking about Black Americans in particular, this is the closest a lot of us have been to whiteness and capitalism in a lot of our generation, like a lot of our families, right? You got people working in tech and corporate, you know, entrepreneurs, you know, we're creating our own lanes. And I think it's really easy to get caught up in that and money and what this means. And well, these folks have it. Why can't I have it too? And I think for me, I'm always reminded that I'm able to do what I am doing right now because there are Black people who fought for me to be able to do what I'm doing right now, especially on the trains, like the Pullman Porters who fought, you know, became the first Black labor union in the United States, the Ladies Auxiliary of the Pullman Porters who helped them make that possible, the Green Book, all these things that existed before me that allow me to have the experiences that I have. And I think we're in a time where we're like towing a line of are we really our ancestors' wildest dreams, or are we just replicating what we see? And, you know, how tourism has always been or how travel has always been. I think historically it was, you know, colonizers were travelers. And so we don't want to get caught up in that thin line between, yeah, I'm, you know, I'm traveling here to replicating the harm that displaces people. And so I think keeping that in mind as we're traveling, like, okay, we're traveling, but how are we affecting those around us? How can we support those around us? I think that is what, when our ancestors were fighting for us, you know, to have rights to move freely and not be separated, not do all those things. I think part of that was doing it in a way where it didn't harm other people. I've learned in being in the travel space, it's a very thin line, very, very thin line. Yeah, if we're going to be our ancestors' wildest dreams, we need to really interrogate what that means.
That is such a powerful note to end on. Thank you for that. So what's next for you and your platform? What could we expect?
More train rides. I have some exciting partnerships coming up. I have a few like dream ideas that I'm hoping to manifest that I'm not gonna say out loud because they still, you know, marinating. But I have a few things that I'm really excited to share when the time is right. But definitely more train rides. You know, I'm gonna be showing y'all as much as I can. I'm definitely gonna be pitching other tourism boards. The more folks engage, the more I can say people want to see these things and want to have these experiences. So yeah, I'll be on all social medias sharing some summer trips. I'm doing a summer by rail series currently. So I did my first one talking about the Alaska Railroad, but kind of showing some summer train rides I think folks might be interested in, doing some summer train travel tips video since it is my favorite time of year to train travel, even though I don't have as many train trips as I normally do, kind of already planned. So I'm excited to see where I actually end up this summer. But yeah, more train videos, more Black travel videos, more solo travel, and also some other like non-train adventures sprinkled in there just to get a little bit of balance for your girl. Okay, I love being on a train, but sometimes I need to be not on a train just as much. So
I just gotta get to the destination and be.
sometimes I just do really want to be there and experience a thing and then come home. You know, everything cannot be a week long experience, or I would never be home and y'all would never see the videos. So yeah, I was in India earlier this year, so I still have to share that experience too. So some international stuff is going to be sprinkled in with the US things as well.
All waiting for that. So where can we find you and support your work?
I always joke that I have an irresponsible digital footprint. So if you look up Sojourner White, you will find me because no one else has that name. But I'm Sojournies on most platforms except for Instagram. I'm the Sojournies, so SOJOURNIES. But I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Threads. I'm everywhere except for X. I don't be on that social platform, or I don't stream. So don't look for me there. But everywhere else, you can probably find me.
Awesome. And we'll make sure to include all those links in the show notes. So thank you so much, Sojourner, for being here and sharing your journey with us. This was truly, truly a dream come true for me. So many juicy takeaways. And so for everyone listening, until next time, keep unlocking your Black journey. If you enjoyed this episode, show some love. Like, comment, leave a review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode of Unlock Black Journeys, the podcast. Want even more? Make sure you head to frannythetraveler.com. That's where you'll find more episodes, Black-owned travel guides, and personal reflections of traveling while Black you won't find anywhere else. And don't forget to check out my book, Support Black Period. It's your go-to guide to discovering Black-owned businesses across all 50 states.